Good morning. So I'm Christina, astrology coach at Heart Horizon Astrology and host of Astrology with Heart. Nice to see you. This is episode 11 of the podcast. And we're mainly going to be talking about the full lunar eclipse we have coming up in Virgo. It's going to happen at 12 degrees 54 minutes on the 3rd of March at 11:37 p.m. GMT. So I'm based in the United Kingdom. If you are somewhere else in the world, please do adjust for your location. So if you have your natal chart to hand, keep it with you as I'm talking. It's going to be really, really helpful. If you don't have your natal chart, but you'd really, really like one, then pop across to my website. The link is in the text section below. And all you need is your date of birth, your time of birth, and your location of birth. It will create a chart for you. And believe me, it's going to be super, super helpful as you're listening, because you will know potentially what impact any of these new and full moons will have for you. I want you to take a look there, if you've got your chart, at around 8 to 16 degrees of the mutable signs. That's Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, and Sagittarius. This is where the main action is going to happen. So let's dive in. So we have a full lunar eclipse, very, very exciting when we jump into eclipse season. And this particular one sits on the Virgo-Pisces axis. So all full moons have a sun and a moon in opposition. And so we look at the axis as opposed to just the moon itself. And this particular Pisces-Virgo eclipse series has been unfolding since 2024. It's going to continue to about 2027. And so what are we being asked right now? Well, refinement, release, realignment, especially at this time. At full moons, they're all about culmination, relevation, emotional clarity, bringing things to a point of closure or understanding. So they're end points as opposed to beginning points. What we do find with Virgo in general, it's quite a introverted, internalized, quiet kind of energy, and so it may not be this massive, explosive, dramatic outburst like we might have had with the Leo. For Virgo, it's likely to be something that we're going to feel very much internally and very much in our bodies. So this particular eclipse sits on the nodal axis. So we've got the moon conjunct the south node, and then we've got the sun in Pisces conjunct the north node. And so we call this a nodal eclipse, which is a little bit more exciting. It definitely gives a lot more weight to that Pisces-Virgo relationship. At the same time, we have a series of planets all in the sign of Pisces. We also have Jupiter there in Cancer, and it's an aspect. So we got a lot of water energy again. And I would say this is going to give us more kind of empathetic awareness, more to do with artistry, art, the beauty of things, emotional sensitivity, healing, and with that Jupiter in Cancer, maybe more to do with self-nurture and self-care. And so I've called this podcast and my blog post Chaos to Order to Chaos, which is very, very much, generally speaking, gives you a bit of an understanding of Virgo, which is very much about I'm neat, I'm tidy, I'm orderly, I'm structured, and Pisces, which is quite the opposite. It's very emotive and free-flowing and kind of chaos, kind of a messiness to it. So let's talk a little bit about Virgo as an energy, Virgo as an archetype, right? Psychological understanding. So I studied with the evolutionary school in the USA It was headed by Jeffrey Wolf Green. And he summed up Virgo as the energy defined by what it lacks. This always fascinated me because it sounds like such an ambiguous statement, but I've come to understand much more about what that means. So there is this almost essential emptiness in the Virgo archetype. There's almost like a void that constantly needs to be filled. And this void is really rooted in a space of inferiority. So you may know Virgo as a sign associated with service, where the ego drops. And it's a intermediary archetype, so it sits between, so if we consider a natal chart and we have all our 12 houses then 1 to 5 are very much about the self and personal work, what I do for myself. Once we get to Virgo, it's the intermediary between self and others, which starts in the 7th house. And so it's said in terms of evolutionary astrology that the ego drops and it goes into service. And this service is service to self, service to others, and service kind of out there to the world at large. What can I do in service for the world? What can I do in service to humanity? But despite the kind of macro and generalistic connotations of Virgo, it's also very much about the micro detail. I mean, Virgo is a sign that is highly observational. So it can take quite a lot of what I call chaotic information, chaotic data, and it can make sense of that data. It can give it structure and definition, and it pays attention to all of that detail. It can notice any anomalies. So it's quite a sign that's very good at picking up things that don't fit a pattern, and kind of almost critiquing those. And this is really because it has a strong desire for a sense of perfectionism. Now, let us be honest here, perfectionism is probably not something that really actually exists, but Virgo tries to be as neat, tidy and meticulous as possible in this pursuit of perfectionism, and also in relationship to an attempt to fill that void within itself. So it's a sign that doesn't really abide filthiness, dirtiness, laziness, or any kind of failure. It definitely breathes with perfection, and it corrects and improves. And I want you to really pay attention to this kind of process. And I say process because Virgo is also associated with processes and engineering. But that the process with a Virgo is to observe, notice, analyze, really deep dive in all the detail, critique, find all these anomalies. I'm going to go anomalies, inverted brackets here, and then to improve into a state of betterment. So Virgo is the archetype of discernment. It's the archetype of integration and embodied wisdom. It links to the central nervous system and the gut. And then we get to, it also covers health, nutrition, all those small behaviors and habits that give us kind of a healthy mind and body. It's a sign that loves restoration, and you will usually find many engineers with very strongly Virgo charts. They love to dismantle things, clean them all up, and put them all back together. And I have my Mars in Virgo. I actually have it in the 8th house, which is the house of extremes. And it brought back a memory for me when I was researching for this podcast, that when I was young, and if I felt, because I'm very sensitive, very strong Piscean as well, it was in an environment at home that was very emotionally challenging, I would often take myself into a quiet room, which was usually our dining room, and I would pick a drawer or a cupboard and I would take everything out and I would sort it all into piles. So we'd have a pile of things that were staying, pile of things that could go somewhere else in the house or outside of the house, and things that could go in the bin. And then I would put the things in the bin, I would put the stuff aside that's going somewhere else, and everything that was staying, I would clean it all up, and I would order it all, categorize it all, and put it back in the drawer. And then I would kind of stand back and feel absolutely amazing at what I'd achieved in this activity. And usually I'd have music on doing it, so it's quite a joyful activity, although it might not sound like it is. I think if you're somebody that's very Virgo, you're probably nodding your head going, I think I've done that a few times in my life. So, you know, it's this cleansing, it's this housekeeping, it's this bringing order to chaos, and that's really, really central. And I've got so many stories, I'm not going to bore you with all of them. So many stories of when life for me got particularly chaotic and my body would hit a crisis and it would go, you need to bring back calm, you need to bring back order, you need to bring back kind of a sense of control, you need to cleanse everything that is toxic in your environment, whether that be things or people or places, and just bring it back to this state of equilibrium. And so in a nutshell, here's just a few key areas of Virgo for simplicity. Simplicity, another Virgo term. So a deep desire to understand how things work. Link it here to the engineering, dismantling things, cleaning them up, putting them back together. Also, a link to biology. And yes, an area that I've also studied quite intensely the last few years, understanding how the body works, how the gut works, how digestion works, you know, very, very Virgo. A devotion to improvement and health. So you will often find with Virgos a need for these daily habits, daily rituals, daily routine, and they'll be very health focused. So you know, I had a partner once in my life who was very strongly Virgo, and you know, he had a very set routine, day-to-day routine that included you know, simplistic eating habits and a routine of exercise. Would always work out, very into fitness. The ability to see what others overlook. So this is where Virgo is quite discerning and very detail orientated, and you will find again with Virgos they might get a bit flustered, but they'll tend to remember things like how you have your coffee or your tea, or just certain things that you like, you know, your different interests, and that they do tend to remember them because detail is very important. A grounded relationship with the body and daily rituals. I really like this one. And I have integrated a number of extra rituals into my life as guided by my wonderful wellness coach. Giving him a name drop, Stephen Dawkins, is absolutely amazing, and I would say he's very Virgo himself too. So there's, you know, this integration of these daily rituals, whether they be waking up at a particular time, getting a good exposure to the sun, getting that vitamin D absorption going, really, really good for your mental health. Another area of Virgo, mental health associated with the central nervous system. Taking of certain vitamins to really get the body to optimum. Affirmations in the morning to strengthen that part of ourselves that may feel less or may question itself. Affirmations to pull up the positivity. Definitely kind of exercise routine, whether that be something more active like boxercise or dance, or something more somatic, so thinking here to Virgo's nervous system, keeping that kind of calm because it's very, very sensitive. So, you know, very light, kind of maybe hatha yoga, something like that. Definitely bringing in something like meditation as well, something just to kind of slow things down. For me, I grew up being a dancer, and so it's very easy for me to get my sense of flow and calm and almost meditate during dancing. So whatever it is for you, something nice and calming there. Precision, craftsmanship, and integrity. Yeah, I mean, the precision aspect of Virgo is fairly obvious with its kind of detail orientation. And I think that this particular one points towards Virgo as the worker. So Virgo rules the sixth house, the house of work. And that's what I call the daily grind, not so much a career or the ambitious side of it, but more about the actual tasks that we have within a working environment. Also covers those that we work with, so our workmates too. There is a very solid craftsman within Virgo. It does apply itself, it does work hard, it does notice all the detail to bring things up to a state of high quality. If you have Virgo and you have Taurus in your chart, whoa, even more so, you will want things to be the best of the best of the best. The Virgin approach, right? I know what you're thinking, but when we say Virgo is kind of virginal, it's really a link to purity. There's also, I feel, a youthfulness about Virgo too, and perhaps that is due to kind of being very focused and looking after its health and nutrition. It tends to maintain a really nice body, and that is a very healthy body, and usually a kind of a clean appearance, so probably not using too much makeup would be very typically Virgo. A few other words associated with Virgo would be simplistic, economical, efficient, minimalistic. So let's talk a little bit about that shadow side of Virgo, what to be aware of if we are very strongly Virgo, and especially at this time of this full lunar eclipse. So with Virgo, really, that shadow emerges when the desire for improvement and betterment becomes self-erasure, or when overthinking and over-critiquing swallows the beauty of becoming and motion. And what's interesting when I look at this shadow is I see in its shadow almost the strengths of Pisces. So to give you another story of my own experience, so being somebody with Mars and Virgo in the 8th house, so with it associated so much with kind of, I call it the vault, that psychological space. I used to, if I had something on my mind and then I needed to really deep dive on, it was particularly challenging, I would sit in something like a shower or bath, so there's the Pisces opposition, and I would really go to town on whatever it was. I would really think deeply, question deeply. I'd almost kind of rip shreds off myself in some sense until I kind of hit a point of rock bottom. And then after that, I would almost gently pile up all these metaphorical pieces and work myself into a stage of what I call hyper strength, so stronger than I was before, and literally improving through this act. And that's obviously a very extreme side of it, and I'm not suggesting anyone else to do that. I'm just giving you a real life example of really where we kind of have to be very, very conscious of potentially falling into some of that shadow side, because that's obviously a part of me that over analyzes and over critiques, but I'm aware of it and I bring it to the space of renewal and kind of a healthy mindset afterwards. So if we look at the shadow of Virgo, and I'm just going to list a few of what I call Virgo's bugbears. So hypercriticism of self and others. Really take a look in your chart where Virgo is. if it's in your personal houses, then it's likely to be something that comes across within you personally. But if it comes across in any of the houses from 7, 8, 9, it may involve others. If it's in your 7th house, do you find that you might be overly critical of your partner? Maybe days if you don't feel like they make an effort with the way they dress, do you comment on it? Do you think about it and do you comment on it? Anxiety disguised as standards. So Virgo does have particular standards. It is, it is very much about quality and that perfectionism. And yeah, we can call that quality standards almost. So it gets anxious if it doesn't get there. I know if I write something and I make a mistake with it, I'm really, really unhappy about making any kind of mistake, especially when I've checked it. But I do see that as a little bit of Pisces tapping on my shoulder saying, this is okay. Humanness is, hey, you're making an odd mistake, and I'm pushing to make more mistakes for you so you can get that. Over-functioning or over-responsibility. I think more of this over-functioning is more this kind of mental fire, this mental burnout, this analysis paralysis that can happen with Virgo. Like it is an analyst. It does want to know every detail. Got another story for you. I actually lived with another astrologer just very, very briefly when he was going through a separation, bless him. And I could go out to work, he'd be at the home, and I could literally tell him when I got back everything he did in the day, and he'd sit there going, oh my gosh, how would you know? And I'd be like, I'm a person of detail, so I come in and from a sensory viewpoint, I could smell coffee, I could smell whatever he had to eat. I could see if something was moved in the kitchen. I would notice an odd bit of mud, so I know he went walking. I knew it rained that morning, right? And so I could put it all together. I could pretty much tell him what his day was. Honestly, it's like an investigator. So Virgo sometimes kind of has to let itself off the hook. Not everything needs to be a project of analysis. Sometimes things can just be switched off from, just step back from. A fixation on flaws. I talked about this one in my examples. Going to town on every little mistake. Obviously there are areas in life and there are some job roles where we kind of do need to be pretty perfect in what we're putting. It can have an implication. But in other areas, you do your best. Try your best. If you're not very good at checking things, you pass to someone else who is. You find a way around it, but you don't overly beat yourself on something that is low level, minor. Feeling never enough or lacking or inferiority, and this is that kind of ego drop part of Virgo. It's also, trying to fill this void of emptiness, of inferiority, of less in some way, of not quite being good enough. And I actually have a brilliant ritual on my blog, but I might read it out a little bit later on about focusing on that and the affirmations. So I think at its core, Virgo's shadow is really this fear of being imperfect and being unworthy in some states. Do really look at where Virgo is in your chart. Look at what cusp Virgo is on, or if it's intercepted within a house. Look at your 6th house. Look at any planets you have in Virgo. Look at Mercury in your chart, which is its ruler, any aspects there. Give you a good understanding of how Virgo you are and where Virgo is going to show up in your life. Also, where this lunar eclipse is going to land for you as well. I think being, what's that word? Forewarned is forearmed. So it's good to have it all in mind. And if you do have a lot of Virgo in the chart, it's going to be really, really impactful for you. Then really kind of focus on that betterment side of Virgo. yeah, there might be things not right about myself. I might look in the mirror and not like my body right now, but what can I do? That's a process to move towards the body that I want. So let's just spend a little bit of time here talking about the sun that's in Pisces, 12 degrees of Pisces, and the Virgo Pisces axis. And I said at the beginning that, with every full moon, we have the sun in the opposite sign, and so we're looking at this kind of balancing process between them. So this is really the line between embodiment and surrender. Virgo being quite a physical, tangible earth sign, and the surrender then in Pisces being a very kind of fluid and spiritually aware and noting of kind of subtleties rather than actualities. I always think of energy where, often we think that something happens when it manifests, when we actually see it physically, but really it happens long, long before they're in the unseen. And so I want you to kind of imagine that Virgo is that state of physical manifestation almost, in a sense, being as an earth sign, whereas Pisces is the kind of feels the movement towards it behind the scenes, the unseen potential almost of what it can be before it finally comes to being. Probably could have said that a little bit more economically, but anyway, I hope you understand what I mean. So I've put here as Pisces is the formless entity that allows the universe to move the collective, whereas Virgo is more of a physical, tangible entity that requires productive movement through personal effort. Both of them linked to health and healing. Virgo more on kind of the healthy side. What can I do for my body? What can I see in my body? Bear in mind that physical element. Pisces more about the healing side, and there is a part of there's a mental health for both of them, but again in that more physical and non-physical sense. You can find in Pisces that it can really hold things in a subconscious way, and I feel like if Pisces just absorbs everything, and if it holds it and doesn't let it go, then it moves to Virgo and it's felt and seen and experienced in the body as a biological illness. This can happen. So that health healing. So learning to work with the Pisces energy is very healing for the Virgo archetype. Learning to, I won't exactly say shrug things off because that minimizes what they are, more of a sitting with something for as long as they need to, but not over sitting with it. Bear in mind that Virgo can be the overthinker and the over-analysis, but getting it to a point of, okay, this is a burden, this bit is the shabby, the bits I don't want. I can let them go. I'm going to let them go. And very consciously being aware of that and saying, I'm going to let them go. Virgo is very much what I call contained within itself. Not so much the body borders like Capricorn, but it is very much from within the body and the biological functions. The improvement very much comes from that inside, and you see it in the external self. So it really feeds kind of the body as a vessel with healthy food and healthy thoughts which go inward but are shown outwards. And this is where it kind of nourishes itself with very consistent and tangible results. So like the daily rituals and affirmations and journaling. I think there's a side to Virgo, and again with my Mars there, I measure my days in part by how productive I've been. And that productivity, if a nod here towards Pisces, is not necessarily, I wrote a blog post today, although that does count, but more that I took half an hour to sit with myself and do my breathing exercises. That's still a win. Yeah, that's still a behavior. It's still part of my daily ritual, and it's still something that I would celebrate. And I think that's really, really important with Virgo, because it can be so hard in itself, because it can get very anxious, and, you know, it's going to start to feel everything in the body and the muscles. If you've got a lot of Virgo in your chart, do you feel like your muscles kind of clench, or you're held in when you get overwhelmed and anxious? Okay, so those lovely rituals here can really help you kind of break out of that, relax those muscles again. Hot soaks in the tub, yeah? Pisces, water, hot soaks in the tub, Epsom salts in there, get them in there, really good for the body. Get it warm enough so you feel your body is literally relax itself. Breathing exercises, taking time out to read. This is still a win. Reading is a win. You know, I find it very relaxing. Maybe you find it very relaxing. So we see in Virgo this kind of what I call proactive motion. It's very conscious that it needs to move, it needs to do. Yeah. Pisces then heals very much by almost taking its foot off the gas, its foot off the pedal. So it's got no ego as such. It's very well connected with everything. It doesn't have those boundaries, very porous, and it just feels this almost ebb and flow within the collective. It feels God or the universe, whatever your belief system is. It also feels what I call the collective fears and the anguish and the pain in the world, the wars that go on, and the famines that happen, and, you know, climate change and the impacts that happen there. It's a very, very feeling side, but it leads very much with compassion. And whenever I talk about Pisces, I always say, if you want to understand all of the different energies associated with Pisces, if you have a solid understanding of the life of Jesus Christ, that's going to give you a good flavor, that unconditional love, that compassion, miracles, that kind of wisdom, the idea of the unseen, the connection to God, very, very much Pisces. Again, they have in common that they're not so much about self-gain. It's very much about, you know, that service element is there. One of my clients is, they're actually missionaries. And so, you know, they do God's work, essentially. They go out in the world and they do, you know, wonderful things, often at great risk to themselves for other people. So Pisces is very receptive. It's very receptive and responsive. It receives. So where Virgo is going to be, I must activate, I must pursue, in a sense. Pisces very much, I hold, I wait, I receive. Well, I say wait, not so much wait. It's not so much sitting on it. It's more whatever comes to me, and, you know, he's for me. That kind of way. And so just a few questions here, right, about Virgo, Pisces, and this axis in general. So Virgo is really kind of asking, what can I tend to, what can I refine, what can I heal through conscious effort, what must I work hard for and apply hard work, and how can I support my physical and biological health. And then Pisces on the other side, you know, about what is being surrendered, forgiven, dissolved, what must be released, let go of, what can flow, what does God create a universe, again, whatever your belief system is, when does it come to me, right, instead of pursuing. And this balance here, this dance around kind of boundaries and compassion, about the body and the spirit, the body, mind, and then the spirit, and truth that is very much practical and almost non-practical, most mystical. I think they work best when they're focused on the best of both of them, when they're focused on giving, supporting others and the world at large, when they're moving towards a state of improvement, towards betterment. But when they're understanding that that not having the perfect body, whatever that is okay too. Healthiness is a better option, a better middle ground. So we're going to move on to the chart section. I'm going to pull that up on screen so you can see the sun and the moon. They're on the nodal axis, and that beautiful series of planets in Pisces. Stunning, right? So when we have the sun and the moon fall on the nodal axis, The nodal axis then represents the collective evolution. So within our own charts, we have our own nodal axis and our own personal evolution, but here we see it at a collective level. And because it's already an eclipse, the moon's that little bit closer to Earth, it's definitely that bit stronger. We're now saying that even more intensified. So there's a lot of weight here given to Virgo and to Pisces. That moon sits on the south node, and when we see a kind of a nodal eclipse on the south node, we're seeing more of a collective release, right? And I think we're going to feel that quite a lot in our bodies at a somatic level, like a this kind of breathing out. I think with the nodes involved, it's a little bit like that feeling of a seesaw. One has to switch to the other, and as soon as you kind of let go, you realize you don't have the control for where it's going to land, it's going to happen. So there probably is going to be a bit of it's outside of our control, but it's really important that we kind of trust for that to happen. I'd say it's going to release that inner perfectionist, that need to hyper plan, to map success to productivity and tangible results, to release the overthinking, the anxious attachment to detail, that feeling to less than. Virgo is going to pull this all to the surface. It's going to bubble up for your conscious understanding, and for you to kind of go through it, remove it, renew, let things go. We also have the moon in a wide opposition to its ruler Mercury, which is currently in retrograde motion 20 degrees of Pisces. So imagine like you've got this layered cake and then you've got icing. Well, this is like the cherry on the top. I mean, there is just so much going on here, especially at an emotional level and at a somatic level. So this really does ramp up the intensity another layer. So where we're seeing it also there in connection to the North Node in Pisces, we know that this is playing a big role in our evolution. So we've got that moon in Virgo, really kind of pushing that release point, and now here we've got Mercury there in Pisces on the North Node, having an integral effect on our progression forward. And so this really does signal to me, about the Piscean themes being huge right now. A lot of letting go, a lot of healing, a lot of having compassion. Perhaps we need more self-compassion right now. What identities in that we've held on to, where we've been overly perfect and over-analyzed and over-scheduled, where we can kind of take a step back from that within ourselves too. I think with Pisces we see a lot more getting involved in nature, feeling more connected, more activities that are less kind of high impact and more kind of low impact relaxation activities, being in nature, taking off your shoes and your socks, feeling the earth beneath your feet. That really fuses the Virgo Pisces effect as well. You might find with all of this Pisces energy that you're going to be really noting kind of how things really stir you internally, really stir your emotions. And also, and this is an interesting one, symbols. And I always notice a lot of symbols, and I have symbols associated with different people and different times in my life and songs. And so I kind of really know if they come up, especially if they come up in repetition, or a few things together and it just reminds you of something. It just pulls it back into the conscious. So this may obviously pull up things that are a little bit traumatic or quite sad for you. That might be hard with all this emotion. To give yourself a lot of grace. Remember to take those deep breaths. Use the rituals here as well. Use those questions. Really just sit there. Use your journal. Use your notebook as well to write things down. Release it from the body, because anything stored in the body with Virgo is, remember, we said it's really restrictive and can be anxiety inducing. And we also have the moon in a sextile to Jupiter, again reinforcing all of this water energy. It's at 15 degrees of Cancer. So whenever we see, Jupiter is the planet, it's the largest planet in the solar system that we know of, and it's a planet of expansion. It's actually a very kind of joyful and fortuitous planet, which is lovely, but it does expand whatever sign it's in. So in Cancer, it's going to expand that emotional self as well. We want to kind of lean into more of this positivity, more of the joy of learning, the joy of growth, the joy associated with whatever we believe. And in Cancer, we might feel more intensified draw towards being around our families, bonding activities, or routines where there's a lot of self-care. I mean, my family are very, very close. I'm half Italian. We spend a lot of time together, and food is nourishing. Food is a bonding activity. So whatever that is with you and your family, or people that you deem to be your family, it doesn't necessarily have to be a blood bond. If you're focusing more on yourself, a self-care routine, protecting yourself, protecting your mind, protecting your body, maybe learning a new skill which expands your mind, a very kind of nourishing skill like nutrition, cooking, hugely Cancer energy, or being with your family, being with your children or other children within your family, or children in your community that being around your home, doing things at home. So again, expanding that kind of what I call the home improvement project, especially as we're coming now, it's getting warmer here in the United Kingdom. I started going outside more, and I can plan forward about what to grow in the garden now. So what can you do at home as well? And all of that is feeding into keeping that anxiety level low, being out in nature, and still pulling on those kind of Piscean themes too. So I'm just going to end, as I usually do, with two things. One is a few questions for you to think about. Bear in mind that if you go to my blog post, and the link is below, there's lots of other questions in there, and I think they're really great, especially for a Mercury ruled sign like Virgo, to just have them in your mind. Don't overly hold them. Don't get overly attached to them. Just let them come in, see what comes out from them, write it down, kind of release it on the page. That's a really great one to do. So I'm just going to go through a few of them and let you read the others if you wish to in your own time. So, where am I holding myself to impossible standards? What small, consistent habits would genuinely support my well-being? What am I ready to release from my daily life? And given the amount of Pisces as well, here's a few with that in mind. What needs forgiveness within myself and in relationship to others? Where can I surrender control and trust the process? And where am I avoiding truth by escaping into overwhelm or fantasy? Or where am I numbing out? And this is a big one. If you know people that are quite Piscean, my mum's very Piscean, and I know this, that she loves just to sit there watching the telly. And absolutely, watching the telly is a great way to relax. But if we do it to excess, it can become just something we do to avoid, or something we do to kind of numb out a lot. And I just want to leave finally here with just a couple of rituals. And these are really lovely rituals. I'm just going to talk about two. So one of them is a purification ritual. So it's really that you just choose one thing that you want to cleanse, and that might be something within your space. It might be your email inbox. It might be your schedule. It might be your diet. Just choose one thing just to cleanse and just bring a sense of kind of order and purification to that action. I said to you about the example of me clearing out the drawer of the cupboard at home. That's definitely one, and I've spoken to a good few people that have done pretty much a similar activity. If they've just felt, I just want to spring clean. Yeah, Virgo energy too. And And then we've got one called the enough invocation. So write down all the ways you've been trying to earn your worthiness. You know, just write them all down, release them onto the page, and either, you know, bury them outside or burn them in a candle flame. Obviously, be very safe about it, and just say, as well as a kind of outward expression of a verbal message here to yourself: I am enough without improvement. And I think the I am enough, I remember when I lived in Ireland, I remember going into a house, we were doing a viewing, and a woman had put a big post-it note and it said, I am enough. I am enough. And it really stuck with me afterwards. And I did wonder, you know, was that kind of that Virgo energy coming in? And there were other things around the house we could put together and almost have a story, and it was kind of fun. But I do remember that I am enough, reminding ourselves that we're enough as we are. And that doesn't mean we don't move towards betterment, but we always love ourselves at each stage of that process. We have grace for ourselves. So thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. All of the links that I've mentioned and content and resources, they're all below for you, but if you don't see anything, please do put a comment on there for me. You will also find me on social media channels, and I'm happy to chat there too. Right here on the podcast, share, leave a comment, review, all are fantastic, whatever feels good for you. I'm also on Instagram, and I'm on TikTok, and a little bit around on Facebook, and I will be back in a couple of weeks with another episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you.